Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not a rogue agent or a double-crossed spy in a sleek trench coat with a ticking briefcase. You're a test subject. A disposable variable in a file stamped top secret and left too close to the shredder. You didn't volunteer, not really. Maybe you signed something. Maybe someone else did. Or maybe they just picked you. The point is, you're in now. And they're going to open you up. Not with scalpels, but with syringes, wires and words that don't quite make sense until it's too late to stop believing them. Before we pump your veins full of liquid hallucination and start explaining how many volts it takes to make you forget your own name, do me one small favour. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing who's tuning in from around the world. And if you'd like early access to more of these grim bedtime stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. They didn't knock. No black cars, no midnight abductions, no drama. Just a clipboard, a signature, and a polite man in a crisp white coat who told you the government was funding exciting new treatments for anxiety, or addiction, or whatever box they thought your name fit into. You don't remember what you signed. You're not even sure you signed anything at all. Maybe it was a nurse, maybe a janitor, maybe someone in an office in Washington who needed to hit a quota. You didn't volunteer. You were acquired. You weren't important. You weren't connected. You weren't the kind of person people double-checked paperwork for. Just another case number in a VA backlog. Another body sitting too quietly in a waiting room. You didn't scream. You didn't struggle. That made you perfect. The less you resisted, the more they could do. That's how you ended up here, wherever here is. And by the time you realise the walls don't have any clocks, it's already too late. It started small. A different nurse, a new doctor, a few extra tests, harmless things. They called it baseline collection. Blood pressure, reflexes, memory recall. You tried to stay polite, cooperative. You thought maybe if you smiled enough, they'd move you up the wait list for something real. A proper treatment, something FDA approved and peer reviewed. You didn't realise you weren't in a hospital anymore. You were in a system, a project, a folder with a code name that would never be declassified until long after you stopped recognising your own handwriting. You don't know who picked you? Someone did. Someone in Langley, or Montreal, or San Francisco, or maybe just the guy with a buzz cut 2 doors down from your psych ward bed. Someone read your intake form and thought, yes, this one. Maybe you were young enough to bend, or broken enough to stay bent. Maybe it was your military record. Maybe it was your lack of one. Whatever the reason, your name got underlined in red ink by someone you'd never meet, and that was enough. There's no welcome packet, no orientation video, just new instructions and a rising sense that things aren't what they're pretending to be. The bed sheets are rougher now. The lights stay on longer. The food is colder, and it arrives with no explanation and fewer utensils each time. You start to feel like you're being watched, but not by people, by systems, by clipboards, and cathode tubes and notes in the margins of your file that you'll never get to read. You ask questions, you get smiles, you stop asking, you try to remember when things changed, but memory doesn't work here. Not reliably. It slips. Things rearrange. A week feels like a month, or maybe the other way around. One day, there's a new nurse. She doesn't introduce herself. She just takes your vitals and hums a song that feels too familiar. You ask what it is. She tells you she doesn't know she's humming. The next day she's gone. No explanation, no replacement. The humming stays in your head anyway. Eventually you get moved to another room. Smaller, fewer windows. The mattress smells like antiseptic and something beneath it. You ask if this is still part of the study. No one answers. The air hums differently here. Not louder, just more intentional. Like it's listening. Like it's waiting. You tell yourself it's just nerves. That you're imagining things. that this is what progress feels like. But when you press your hand against the wall, it pulses back. You try to leave once, nothing dramatic. You just walk down the hallway like you used to. But the exit sign is gone. Or maybe it was never there. A man with a clipboard blocks your path and asks if you've taken your medication today. You don't remember. He smiles and hands you a cup. You drink it. You don't remember walking back. You wake up in restraints, not tight, just present. Like a suggestion with fabric straps. That's when it really starts. From here, you stop being a person. You become a variable, a component in an experiment with shifting parameters. You are tested, measured, observed. Things are put into your body that no one names. Things are taken out. You start dreaming in languages you don't speak. You lose time. Days vanish like static between channels. You begin to suspect that you're not alone in your body anymore, just the only one still trying to get out. But none of this is a mistake. None of it is accidental. Every moment, every dose, every silence is part of a plan. And the worst part is that the plan doesn't care about you. It never did. You're not an individual. You're data, an outcome, a footnote in someone's internal memo on dosage thresholds or susceptibility profiles. Your screams, when they come, will be charted, normalized, and graphed against the others. And there are others. You hear them sometimes, through the wall, in your head. On the other end of the hallway, that doesn't exist anymore. You're not sure which is worse, knowing they're real or thinking they might be something you were programmed to imagine. Either way, you've stopped asking questions. The clipboard men like that. It makes it easier when the first dose comes. No explanations, just a paper cup and a smile. They called it a supplement, something experimental but safe. You'd been flagged for chronic insomnia, or maybe anxiety, or maybe just because you filled out the wrong intake form too thoroughly. You were told it would help with concentration, with relaxation, with dreams. The nurse was friendly. Too friendly. She had a smile that felt like it had been stapled in place. She handed you a small paper cup with a pill the colour of drywall and watched as you swallowed it. She didn't leave until you opened your mouth again and showed her it was gone. You felt nothing at first, just a gentle warmth in the chest. Then your tongue went numb. Then your thoughts. Not gone exactly, just disconnected. Thoughts rose and fell without meaning, like static that knew your name but didn't care to pronounce it properly. The walls pulsed a little, the corners of the room rounded off like clay under heat. You were handed water, but you couldn't remember how to drink it. You laughed, or you think you did. Someone else in the room definitely laughed. You just can't be sure it was you. The next dose wasn't a pill, it was a shot. Same room, same smile. You didn't question it. The air already smelled like citrus and cleaning fluid, and something underneath, something you would later recognise as fear mixed with metal. The needle was cold going in, warm coming out. Your vision tunnelled for a moment. You blinked and the ceiling was a different colour. You blinked again, and someone was standing closer than they'd been before. No one moved, but everything shifted. Then came the dose that didn't have a name. No cup, no needle, just a drip in your arm and a small recorder playing a woman's voice over and over again, telling you you were safe, that you were calm, that everything was under control. The words bled together like wax. You tried to hold on to their meaning, but they slid off your mind like oil. That's when the walls started breathing. Not metaphorically. They expanded and contracted like lungs. You reached out to touch them and felt your hands sink into plaster. You screamed or tried to, but your voice got caught on the edge of your throat and turned into a vibration that only you could hear. The clock on the wall dripped like a candle. Numbers slid down the glass and pooled on the floor. Time became a texture, sticky, slow, uneven. You felt hours stretch like rubber bands across your teeth. You lost track of how long you'd been in the chair. You lost track of the chair, then of your legs, then of your name. There was a moment, maybe several, where you were convinced you were made of glass. Every breath felt like a risk, every sound like a hammer. You begged them to stop. Or you would have, if your mouth still worked. They told you it was working exactly as expected. That phrase would become familiar. You'd hear it from different people, always with the same cadence. It was never a comfort. The only thing it confirmed was that someone, somewhere, wanted this to happen. The loss of control, the panic, the confusion. It wasn't a side effect, it was the point. Your hallucinations weren't beautiful. No kaleidoscopes or neon fractals or sacred visions. Just distortion. Mundane things bent into grotesque shapes. The corner of the ceiling developed teeth. The nurse's shoes left trails of blood that only you could see. Your own hands took on a texture like wax fruit. When you looked in the mirror, your eyes didn't blink at the same time. You stopped trusting reflections. Then shadows. Then yourself. You weren't alone in the room. Not really. Sometimes there were others. Patients, maybe. Or actors. Or hallucinations planted deliberately to provoke you. One man screamed until he collapsed. Another wept for an hour in perfect rhythm with the ticking of a metronome no one could find. You tried to talk to them, but your words came out backwards, or not at all. Communication started to feel like a trick someone forgot to teach you, so you stopped trying. Sleep didn't come, not the way it used to. You'd close your eyes and fall into something like unconsciousness, but it wasn't rest, it was disconnection. A blank space filled with sound, low mechanical murmurs, phrases in foreign languages you didn't speak but somehow understood, footsteps that never reached the door. When you woke, you were always in the same position, arms at your sides, eyes dry, jaw clenched like it had forgotten how to unclench. You started to suspect you weren't waking at all, just switching scenes in a film someone else was editing in real time. Eventually, you stopped reacting. Not out of calm, but because reactions required interpretation, and you couldn't trust your own. Was the ceiling caving in, or was it just breathing again? Was the man in the corner real this time? Did it matter? You were asked to fill out a form one morning. You stared at it for 20 minutes before realizing you couldn't read anymore. The letters didn't arrange themselves into words. They just hovered on the page, mocking you with their stability. Still, they kept dosing you. Different compounds, different colours. Some were injected, others were absorbed through your skin. Once, they made you wear a metal cap connected to a panel that blinked without rhythm. You felt nothing at first, then everything at once. The nurse's smile widened by a centimetre that took an hour to observe. The floor undulated. You fell through it. Or above it. You can't be sure. What you do know is that when you came back, your fingernails were bleeding, and your mouth tasted like copper and citrus. No one apologised. They just adjusted the dosage. By now, you weren't sure what they were testing. How much you could take, how far your mind could be pushed before it tore, or maybe how long it would take for you to beg for more. Not because you wanted it, but because at least it meant someone was still paying attention. You started to crave the structure, the pattern. The doses became landmarks, the hallucinations, mile markers. You were a lab rat in a maze with no exit, so you learned to appreciate the walls. That was the real trick. They didn't need to keep you here. Not once you stopped needing the illusion of choice. You're not told why you've been moved. You just wake up somewhere else. The ceiling is lower. The air is heavier. The walls have that motel wallpaper. Faded stripes, water-stained at the seams. There's no art, no phone, no remote. The blackout curtains are drawn and nailed in place, sealed against even the suggestion of sunlight. The carpet smells like bleach and sleep. You think you recognize the pattern, but you can't be sure. Everything feels familiar and wrong, like a dream recycled from someone else's memory. They say this will be your new room. No explanation, no transition. One nurse rolls you in. Another secures your arm to the bed frame with soft leather straps. Or maybe it's just your imagination. You look down and your arms are free. You look again and they're not. It's hard to keep track. The restraint isn't about physical control, it's about suggestion. You start to stay still, even when you're unbound. Your body doesn't need permission anymore. It just waits. There's a drip now. It's always there. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it pulses, sometimes it's so silent you're sure they've turned it off, only to realise your head is swimming worse than before. You ask what's in it. No one answers. You try different strategies: casual curiosity, desperate pleading, polite medical concern. They smile and note your tone in a binder you're never allowed to see. One nurse calls it vitamins, another calls it therapy. They both laugh, but only one of them means it. The lights hum, not in the usual fluorescent way. It's more deliberate, like they're alive or at least interested. You start to assign them moods. Angry when they flicker, indifferent when they stay too long. Sometimes they don't come on at all. You spend what feels like entire days in the dark, just listening to your breath and the drip and the shuffle of shoes in the hallway that never stops. Then the lights return without warning, and you feel like you're being interrogated by the ceiling. There's no clock. Of course there isn't. Time is a luxury in this place, and you no longer qualify. You try to count your meals, but they stop being consistent. Some days you get 3, some days none. Sometimes a tray appears while you're asleep and vanishes before you can touch it. Once the same cold oatmeal shows up 4 times in a row. You try to complain, but your voice doesn't come out right. You can't tell if your mouth is numb or if the words just don't want to exist anymore. At some point, the angles in the room start to dissolve. You don't know if it's the drugs or the architecture. The corners feel round, then they feel absent. You press your hand against the place where 2 walls should meet, and it just isn't there. Like the geometry gave up. Like the room has decided it doesn't need rules anymore. You laugh, but it sounds wrong in your throat. The acoustics are off. The walls don't echo. They absorb. You try to sleep. Or at least you try to simulate it. You close your eyes and wait for the darkness to shift into unconsciousness. But instead you just hover. Conscious, still, suffocating, in silence. Your thoughts spin in tight, shrinking circles. You remember a window from somewhere else, the shape of your mother's handwriting, a dentist appointment you never made. All of it blends into one long, stretched-out moment that won't stop vibrating under your skin. Eventually, they start the interviews. They bring in men with voices like warm asphalt, flat, heavy, slow. They ask you about dreams, about colours, about what you see when you close your eyes. You try to answer, but your descriptions feel like lies, even when they're true. You say the room has no corners, and they nod like that's progress. You tell them the ceiling breathes, and they mark something down. One man smiles and asks if you believe you're being watched. You do. He marks that down too. Sometimes they show you images, flashcards, but worse, things no one should put on paper. A bleeding dog, a burning child, a face you recognise but can't name, mouth open mid-scream. Then they ask how it made you feel. You're not sure what the right answer is. You try fear, then sadness, then nothing. Nothing seems to be what they want. That's when they show you the same image, again and again, until you stop reacting. The sessions get longer or shorter. It's impossible to tell. You lose all sense of scale. Once you think you're alone for a week. Another time, someone tells you it's only been an hour. You start to suspect there are no days, just cycles, lights, drips, questions, hallucinations, sleep that isn't sleep, wakefulness that isn't waking. One morning, you're certain you died. You feel your body peel away from itself, but then someone adjusts the IV and you return. At least, most of you does. You try to ground yourself with the basics. Your name, your age, where you're from, but they start to slip. You whisper them like prayers, but they crumble in your mouth. Sometimes you write them down, only to find different answers each time. The worst part is, no one corrects you. They just nod, and thank you for your honesty. Eventually, you stop asking to leave. You stop asking what the point is. The room is the point now. The hum, the drip, the absence of corners. You belong to it, or it belongs to you. It's hard to separate. The idea of outside becomes laughable. There's nothing out there for you anymore. You're not even sure you came from somewhere. You're here. You've always been here. And the room has no exit. Just another wall pretending to be solid. You'd scream, but the sound wouldn't go anywhere. It would just hang in the air like everything else. Unfinished, unanswered, absorbed. They don't explain where you're going. They don't have to. You stopped expecting explanations a long time ago. They wheel you down a hallway that smells like chlorine and vinyl and something faintly metallic, then open a door that doesn't look like it leads anywhere at all. The room is dim and wet and humming. They tell you to undress. You obey. Not because you trust them, but because disobedience takes energy you don't have anymore. One of them hands you a paper-thin robe. Another fits plugs into your ears. Someone tapes over your eyes gently but firmly, like they've done it dozens of times. You think about asking a question, but forget what it was. The liquid is warm. Too warm. Body temperature, they say, but it feels like blood. Not hot enough to burn, not cold enough to shiver. Just present. Like an idea you can't shake. They lower you into it slowly, supporting your back like you're fragile. Like this is a kindness. You want to believe them, but your body disagrees. As soon as your limbs are submerged, the water presses in from all sides. Not physically. It's supposed to be buoyant, but psychologically. You feel like a fetus or a corpse. It's hard to decide which. Then the lid closes. It's not a loud sound, it's a whisper. A final padded click that seals you away from the world. After that, there is nothing. No light, no sound, no scent, no edge. You float, suspended in absolute stillness. At first your mind races. You reach for thoughts, for context, for something to cling to. But there's nothing. No point of reference, no orientation. Up and down dissolve within minutes. Your arms feel distant. Your legs feel detached. You try to move, but your muscles don't respond. They've been given permission to forget their purpose. The heartbeat comes next. Not your full body. Just that one sound. Slow, steady, loud in your own skull. It becomes a clock, a metronome, a drum beat counting down to something that never arrives. You try to slow it down. You try to speed it up. You try to think of something, anything else, but it's all you have. You wonder if your heart is the only thing that still believes you're alive. After a while, you stop trying to measure time. A minute stretches like taffy. An hour dissolves. You start to hallucinate, or maybe dream, or maybe remember, but even those categories blur. Faces you haven't seen in years rise out of the darkness, their mouths moving silently, their eyes too large. Sometimes the faces speak, but not with sound, just with intent. You don't understand the words, but you feel the meaning scrape across the inside of your ribs, like wire. At one point, you become convinced your skin is unraveling, like threads from a sweater pulled too tight. It's not pain exactly, just an overwhelming awareness of surface. Every pore, every follicle, every old wound suddenly awake and broadcasting. You try to shift your position, to break the pattern, but you don't have a position anymore. You're just suspended thought in warm fluid, quietly undoing yourself. You don't know how long it lasts. It could be hours, it could be days, it could be the rest of your life, parceled into quiet seconds and distributed evenly across a flat, dark eternity. When they finally open the lid, it's not a relief. It's a violation. Light floods in like a weapon. Sound returns with the subtlety of an air raid. You flinch, convulse, choke on your own breath like a newborn ripped into consciousness too fast. They lift you out, slowly and wordlessly, and wrap you in a towel that feels like sandpaper against your skin. Your limbs are pruned and trembling. Your mouth tastes like static. You try to speak, but the words come out wet and meaningless. Someone pats your shoulder like you've accomplished something, but you can't remember what it was. You just know that part of you is still floating, still sealed in that black fluid, still listening to the sound of your own heart echoing through a vacuum. They don't let you walk afterward. They wheel you back to the room with the breathing walls and the blind corners and the sheets that never stay clean. You lie there, damp and quiet, watching the ceiling as it pulses with lazy interest. You should be relieved that the experience is over, but you're not sure it is. Your thoughts don't belong to you anymore. They arrive like mail sent to the wrong address, foreign, inconvenient, and increasingly difficult to return. The next day, or what you assume is the next day, they ask you questions. How did it feel? Did you hear anything? Did your thoughts change? You nod and shrug and try to fake coherence, but everything inside you is soft now, soft and slippery and unwilling to hold shape. You feel like a draft of a person, like someone halfway through being erased. That's when you notice your memories behaving strangely. Not gone, but rearranged. You can remember your childhood dog's name, but not the smell of your mother's hair. You know the lyrics to a commercial jingle from the 60s, but not your own birthday. Some details come back out of order. Others show up polished and false, too clean to be real. You try to write them down, to sort them, but the paper stays blank. You keep forgetting why you started. Eventually, the nurse tells you it was a success. You don't know what she means. You don't ask. You just nod, because that's what you do now. You nod and wait for the next dose, the next room, the next silence. The tank did what it was designed to do, not erase you, but loosen you. Unhook your mind from its anchors. You're not broken, you're modular, and someone else is holding the blueprint. It doesn't start with a voice, it starts with a flicker. Not of sound, but of suggestion. A sense that a thought has entered your head from the outside. It arrives fully formed, like a sentence overheard in the middle of a conversation. You don't remember thinking it. You just find it there, waiting. Something simple like, don't trust the man in the hallway. You ignore it. For a while. Then it comes again. Louder, or maybe just clearer. A woman's voice this time. Not familiar, exactly, but close. The kind of voice you associate with safety. A voice that knows your name and says it with rhythm, like a lullaby. It tells you things. That you're in danger. That you've been here before. That this isn't the first round of testing. You try to shake it off, but it doesn't leave. It lingers. It repeats itself. It begins to feel more accurate than your own thoughts. Soon the voices multiply. Some are whispers, barely audible. Others arrive with the force of shouting, though no one around you reacts. They argue. They interrupt. They contradict each other. You find yourself having conversations out loud, forgetting that no one else is supposed to be in the room. The staff doesn't respond. They only watch. Sometimes they nod. One nurse writes something on a clipboard every time you respond to someone who isn't there. You stop knowing which voice is yours. The one that sounds like your mother tells you to be careful. The one that sounds like you tells you it's already too late. Another one, low, calm, clinical, narrates your movements like a radio announcer calling a game no one asked to hear. You try to resist. You bite your tongue. You scream into your pillow. You bang your head against the mattress frame until the pain feels real enough to anchor you. But the voices keep coming. They're patient. They outlast you. They know things you don't. Memories you can't access. Events you don't recall living through. One of them describes a man you supposedly killed. Says he had a name you once repeated in your sleep. Another voice corrects the detail. Says it wasn't a man, but a woman. And it wasn't you. It was someone you used to be. You try to ask the nurses about it, but they just tell you you're progressing well, that the treatment is working. You want to ask which part of it is working, but the question dissolves before it reaches your lips. Some voices speak in code, strings of numbers, military ranks, coordinates. Others speak plainly, like co-workers making small talk. One gives you instructions. Turn the handle, count to 4, don't breathe until the light goes red. You obey once, just to see what happens. Nothing does, not right away, but later that night, you feel something click inside your skull, like a mechanism being set. You don't sleep. You just lie there, eyes open, waiting for an order you don't remember needing. The worst part is, the voices start making sense. Not always, not all of them, but enough that you begin to wonder if they're right. They tell you things you were never told by anyone else, things you were never supposed to know, that the doctor with the green pen isn't licensed, that the room you're in used to be part of a hotel chain before the CIA bought it, that you've been through this protocol 8 times already, but they wipe the memory each round. You want to disbelieve them, but then the green pen vanishes. The wallpaper peels, revealing a logo behind it. You start to believe. They begin to anticipate your thoughts. They finish your sentences. They suggest words before you say them. You feel less like you're thinking and more like you're being guided through a script. The distinction between memory and suggestion disappears. You try to write things down, but the handwriting looks forged. You tear the paper up. You find the same words written on your pillowcase the next day. Eventually, you stop resisting. Not because you agree, but because there's nothing else to do. The effort of sorting real from unreal becomes too exhausting. You tell yourself that even if the voices are false, they're at least consistent. And consistency is something you've forgotten how to find anywhere else. You make deals with them. You let them choose what you eat. You let them decide when to speak. You stop calling them voices, you start calling them thoughts. That's when they get comfortable. They move in. Not in a dramatic way, no possession, no ritual, no glowing eyes in the mirror, just a quiet assumption of control. A suggestion here, a phrase there. One day you realize you've gone hours without thinking anything original. Every idea you've had was a reaction, a preloaded response, a reflex built by repetition. You aren't sure who built it. You aren't sure it matters anymore. The staff stops testing you for a while. They call it stabilization. You're given more quiet time, more unsupervised hours. You begin to think this is recovery, that maybe it's over. But you're wrong. This isn't recovery. It's integration. They're not removing the voices. They're embedding them, threading them deeper into the structure of your cognition until you don't just hear them. You rely on them. They become your advisors, your conscience, your compass. You're never sure if anyone else hears them. Sometimes you ask cautiously, like someone confessing to a crime. Most of the patients don't respond. One man tells you to shut up before they hear you. You ask who they are. He doesn't answer. The next day he's gone. No one mentions him again. You try not to think about it. The voice in your head tells you that's for the best. You nod. They lower their voices now. No more wires, no more blinding lights. Just soft rooms and softer tones. The man across from you wears a tie and a kind expression. He introduces himself like this is therapy. Like you still have a name worth addressing. You want to believe him. His voice is calm, patient, trained. He tells you that this is a safe space, that you can speak freely, that your thoughts are important. You nod, because it seems like the expected response. He doesn't start with big questions, he starts with dreams. You're asked to describe what you've been seeing, the fragmented images, the loops, the symbols that make sense until you say them out loud. He listens attentively. He takes notes. Sometimes he plays sounds and asks what they make you feel. A ticking clock, a crying baby, a woman humming a lullaby in a language you don't remember learning. You answer, and he thanks you, always politely, like you're helping him help you. Over time, the sessions deepen. The questions get stranger, more precise. Do you remember the red door? Do you still dream in third person? When you hear the word Mercury, what's the first image in your head? You try to keep up, but you feel like you're being nudged into answers you haven't chosen. Sometimes you answer before the question finishes. Sometimes you feel your mouth moving without giving it permission. Then come the suggestions. They start small. You're told to close your eyes and imagine a hallway. You walk down it. At the end is a door. Behind the door is a memory. You're asked to open it. You see something, maybe real, maybe invented. You describe it. The man nods. Then he snaps his fingers and tells you to forget. You do. The door disappears. The hallway crumbles. The next day, when you're asked to describe what you saw, there's nothing. Just a blank space shaped like a thought. They reward you for progress. Not with food or rest. Those are baseline privileges now. But with praise. You're told you're doing well. That you're unusually responsive. That your profile is exactly what they hoped for. You should feel proud, but you don't. You just feel compliant, like a lock that's finally accepted its key. You stop questioning the process. Not because you understand it, but because understanding has become irrelevant. Eventually, the questions shift. No longer just dreams and memories. Now it's loyalty, allegiance. You're asked who you trust, who you fear, who you would protect. They show you photos of people you recognize, from childhood, from hallucinations, from somewhere deeper. You're told to assign numbers to them. 1 means protect, 10 means eliminate. You laugh. You think it's a joke. No one else laughs. Later, you're told you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. The next time they bring you in, the tone is different. There's no chair, no clipboard, just a small room with a mirror and a table. On the table is a box. The man with the calm voice tells you to open it. Inside is a pistol. You stare at it for a long time. He doesn't pressure you. He just waits. You reach out, pick it up, feel the weight. The steel is cold and familiar. He asks how it feels. You say you don't know. He tells you that's a good answer. You don't remember standing. You don't remember aiming, but you're standing now. And the gun is pointed, and there's a shape in the room. A mannequin, you think. Or maybe a photo taped to a torso-shaped dummy. It's hard to tell. He tells you to squeeze the trigger. You hesitate. You laugh. It feels absurd. You're not a soldier. You're not trained. You're a patient, a subject, a victim. Then you stop laughing because your finger moves and the sound comes and the mannequin falls and you're still holding the gun. Your ears are ringing. Your mouth is dry. Your hands aren't shaking. He writes something down. Then he asks you what you remember. You open your mouth, but nothing comes out because you don't remember lifting the gun. You don't remember the moment before the shot. You just remember the command. The rest is black tape, neatly cut and removed. He tells you to sit back down. You do. He tells you to breathe slowly. You do. He tells you that this is progress. That memory is a burden, and you're finally learning to set it down. You nod. You don't know what else to do. The idea of resisting feels childish now. Hypnosis isn't some cartoon spiral or pocket watch trick. It's architecture. Layered. Engineered. Installed over time until your thoughts can't tell which floor they're on anymore. You return to your room. The corners are still missing. The lights still hum. You lie down on the bed and stare at the ceiling, replaying the scene. But not like a memory. More like a dream someone described to you. Detached. Unbelievable. You tell yourself it didn't happen. But your body disagrees. Your muscles remember the weight of the gun. Your ears remember the sound. You dream about it. But in the dream, it's your own face on the mannequin. When you wake, the pillow is damp, not with sweat. Later, you ask the nurse if it was real. She smiles, says you must be confusing a dream for something else. She offers you tea. You nod. The voices in your head are silent now, content. The conditioning has taken hold. You are, as the file likely says, highly suggestible. You drink the tea. You start to notice them during transport. Wheeled through corridors under flickering lights, you're told to keep your eyes forward, to stay quiet, to not interact. but it's impossible not to see. There are others here, rows of them, lined up along hallways in chairs that don't face anything. Some in robes, some in restraints, some with wires taped to their temples, heads tilted like the weight of their skulls is suddenly too much to carry. You aren't given names. No one introduces themselves, but you can feel it, the sameness, the vacancy. You recognize it in their posture. You feel it in yourself. They're all in different stages of unravelling. Some twitch constantly, like their nerves forgot how to rest. Others stare straight ahead, silent and slack-jawed, lips moving in prayer or code or nothing at all. A woman near the far wall hums the same 4-note tune every time she's wheeled past your room. You try not to listen. The tune sticks anyway. One day, she isn't there anymore. The humming doesn't stop. You don't know if it's in your head or if someone new picked it up without knowing why. You're told not to make eye contact. A nurse snaps at you once for glancing too long at a boy across the corridor. He looked about 12, pale, thin, eyes ringed and grey. You only caught his gaze for a second, but it stayed with you for days. There was something in it. Not fear, not pain, but resignation. Like he understood this place better than you ever would. Like he'd been here longer. Like he wasn't expecting to leave. You try to forget him. You fail. No one explains how many of you there are. You start counting the cots, the trays, the footsteps. There are too many. And the numbers don't stay constant. Some people vanish. New ones appear. You're not sure where they're coming from or where they go. Sometimes you hear gurney wheels late at night, rolling past your door. Sometimes the wheels stop. Sometimes they don't. You don't ask who's being taken. You stopped asking questions a long time ago. You catch fragments of conversations, though no one speaks to you directly. A name muttered under breath. A number assigned. Subject B14 no longer responsive. Female, mid-30s, exhibited non-compliance. Transfer to Phase 2 initiated. You don't know what Phase 2 is, but you don't want to find out. One day you hear your own number. Not your name, because that's been scrubbed from your memory by now. And you pretend not to notice. You press your hands against your ears and hum. The woman's tune. It helps for a moment. Then it doesn't. The rooms vary. Some have more beds, more restraints. Some are brightly lit. Others so dim it's hard to tell if anyone's even in them. You pass one room where a man is screaming into a wall, repeating the same word again and again. You don't understand it. It doesn't sound like English. A nurse walks in, gives him an injection, and he falls silent mid-syllable. They wheel him out. The word hangs in the air like smoke. You can't stop repeating it in your head afterward. You still don't know what it means. You begin to understand that everyone here is expendable. No one is being cured. No one is being treated. They are being tested, measured, pushed. Their breakdowns are catalogued. Their resistance, or lack of it, is turned into data. Some people shatter fast. Others hold out longer. The ones who last the longest seem to suffer the most. You're not sure which group you belong to. The nurses praise your compliance. The clipboard men nod approvingly when you follow instructions without blinking. You wonder if that means you're winning. Then you remember, this isn't a contest. There is no prize. Occasionally, you hear laughter. Not joyful laughter. Not even deranged. Just automatic. Someone in the room next door giggles every morning for exactly 5 minutes. Then nothing. Silence. You press your ear to the wall hoping for more. Hoping for something human. But there's just a low buzz. Machinery, maybe, or humming. You start to think the walls themselves might be making noise. You mention it to a nurse. She asks if you've been taking your vitamins. You nod. She smiles. The buzzing gets louder. You catch glimpses of older subjects, ones with visible damage. Scars, burns, shaved patches, eyes that don't focus. You wonder what they've been through, what they've seen. Then you stop yourself. Curiosity isn't safe here. Sympathy isn't either. You learn to look away. You learn to keep your eyes on the floor. It's easier that way. Cleaner. You're told that observation is a privilege, that too much exposure can complicate results. You know what that really means. Contamination. Witnessing someone else's suffering might remind you of your own, and they can't have that. Eventually, you realise something worse. It's not just that you're all replaceable, it's that you're replaceable by design. You weren't chosen because you were unique. You were chosen because you weren't. Because someone like you is easy to find, easy to manipulate, easy to erase. The program doesn't need stars. It needs patterns, predictable inputs, repeatable outcomes. Your suffering isn't personal. It's procedural. There's comfort in that, in a way. You're not special. You're not alone. You're just one more experiment in a long, unbroken chain. But that also means no one will notice when you're gone. No one will ask where you went. They'll just scrub your name from a chart, cross out a row, and move on to the next version of you. The next file, the next echo. You stop counting the others. Stop watching the gurneys roll by. You realise it doesn't matter how many of you there are, only that there's always one more. And eventually, that one is you. They call it a consultation, a room you haven't seen before, a machine you don't recognise, a man in a white coat with too many pens and a clipboard too thick. You're not told what the session is for, but you already know the rhythm of this place. Observe, record, escalate. And this one's here to escalate, smiling. Always smiling. He looks like someone's uncle. Crisp white coat, neatly parted hair, cologne that tries to mask something metallic underneath. His shoes are polished. His hands are soft. When he shakes yours, it's firm but not too firm. The kind of practiced grip that says he's had training in bedside manner, maybe even once believed in it. He smiles when he enters the room, and it's not malicious. That would be easier. It's worse than that. It's sincere. He tells you you're doing great, that your progress is remarkable, that the data they're collecting from you is going to change lives. You nod because you've been trained to, or maybe because you want to believe it. He says this work is necessary, that your discomfort is a small price to pay for what they're learning. You don't ask who they are. You already know better than to expect names. He talks to you like a mentor, like someone who wants to see you succeed, like the voltage he's about to apply is something you asked for. The room is colder than usual. The lights have that blue tint again, the one that makes everything look like it's been dipped in antiseptic. He sits beside the machine, the one you've only seen used on the most unresponsive subjects, and flips a few switches. The hum it emits isn't loud, but it vibrates somewhere low in your ribs. You feel it before you hear it. He doesn't rush. Everything is slow, methodical, polite. He asks you to sit, to breathe, to relax. Then he attaches the electrodes to your temples, like he's tucking you into bed. You ask what's going to happen. He tells you you've already been through it once, maybe twice. He can't remember. He checks the clipboard, flips a few pages, nods to himself. Yes, he says, we've calibrated you well. That's the word he uses, calibrated, like you're an instrument, something he's tuning. You wonder if he ever calls you a person when you're not in the room. You suspect not. The first jolt is mild, almost nothing. A buzzing behind the eyes, a flicker at the base of the skull. You flinch, but he tells you it's normal. He writes something down, a notation, a time code, maybe a number, on a scale you'll never understand. Then he turns the dial a little higher, just enough to make your jaw tighten, just enough to blur the edges of the room. He watches you as it happens, not with excitement, not even with curiosity, just observation, the way someone might watch a candle to see how evenly it burns. He tells you to describe what you're feeling. You try. The words get stuck halfway between your brain and your tongue. You say pressure, but that's not right. You say light, but that doesn't make sense either. You say buzzing, and he nods. That's closer. He asks if the buzzing feels familiar. You say yes. He asks where you felt it before. You say everywhere. He writes that down too. The voltage goes up again. This time it's sharper. You hear a tone that isn't in the room. A long, high-pitched frequency that drills straight through the middle of your thoughts and keeps going. Your teeth hurt, your fingertips twitch. He leans in and asks how you feel now. You say, unreal. He smiles again. Good, he says. That's what we're aiming for. You don't pass out. They don't let you. Every time your body tries to shut down, he taps your cheek, or calls your name, or makes a note that brings you back to attention. He wants you conscious. He wants you aware. Because data collected from unconscious subjects is less useful. He's told you that before, not directly, but in the way he frowns when you drift, in the way he adjusts the dials, like he's fine-tuning a radio station. Eventually, your vision starts to separate, not blur, separate, like layers of film unspooling at different speeds. The room shifts sideways, the walls pulse, the doctor leans forward and asks what year it is. You give 3 different answers before he's satisfied. He tells you you're becoming more pliable, that your identity has stopped clinging so hard to fixed points. He assures you that this is a sign of success. You're becoming fluid, malleable, modular. Somewhere deep in your head something resists. A tiny knot of self tries to reassert its shape. You hold on to it, barely, like a pebble in a flood. You think about your name, your family, something solid. But every time you focus, the dial turns again. The buzzing returns, the knot frays. He sees it happening and calls it a breakthrough. By the time the session ends, you're shaking. Not violently, just enough to be noticed. He unhooks the electrodes and pats your shoulder, like you've done a good job. He tells you you're going to make history. You want to ask what kind, but your mouth doesn't work. Your lips form a question that never arrives. He doesn't seem to mind. He thanks you for your cooperation. Then he leaves, coat still clean, clipboard full of proof that the protocol is working. You lie there for a long time after he's gone. The lights stay on. The wires dangle from the machine like forgotten roots. Your skin is damp. Your head feels hollowed out. You think you hear music, faint and tinny, like a radio playing down a well. You close your eyes and see the doctor's smile burned into your vision, soft around the edges, too calm to be honest. You realise you never asked for his name, and he never offered it. You won't see him again for a while, but the hum will stay. There's no warning, just a tray carried in by a technician with mirrored glasses and a neutral face. On the tray, a paper cup, a vial, and a note card with your number printed in block letters. Not your name. That's long gone. You ask what it is. The technician doesn't answer. He tilts the vial into the cup and hands it to you with a nod, like it's a favour. You drink it because you've learned that refusing only delays the inevitable. Besides, you've taken things before. You assume this is just more of the same. It isn't. At first, nothing happens. The lights hum. The air tastes the way old batteries smell. You sit quietly on the cot, waiting. Then your fingers forget they belong to you. You watch them curl and twitch like they're controlled by wires someone else is pulling from another room. The air thickens. The walls stretch. Your heartbeat doubles, then vanishes. You blink once and the room is gone. The world fractures. You are nowhere, and you are everywhere. Shapes bloom in your vision. Not colours, not forms, but ideas pretending to have shape. You hear your name spoken by something with too many mouths. You see the walls melt into liquid geometry. Your body becomes irrelevant. It pulses in and out of existence. Time collapses in on itself, and then explodes outward in every direction. You feel yourself ascending, or maybe descending. The motion is impossible to measure. You are climbing through layers of reality that weren't built for human minds. They doze you again. You don't remember them doing it. You just know suddenly that it's worse now. Your thoughts fragment. Your identity peels off in strips. You see your own face hovering in the air, blinking back at you with confusion. The floor turns inside out. The ceiling breathes. You try to scream, but the sound morphs into music and dances along the corners of your vision. You taste electricity. You smell memories. You are the inside of your own skull, inverted and exposed, lit up like a diagram no one can explain. They attach electrodes to your scalp. Again. Maybe for the 5th time, maybe the 50th. The leads are cold and wet. The doctor is here. Not the smiling one, not anymore, but a different one, silent and methodical. He presses play on a tape recorder. It loops your name, over and over, calm, even, male, a voice you think it might be your own, but from a version of you that never existed. Every repetition drills deeper. You start to believe the voice more than you believe your own thoughts. Then comes the shock. It isn't pain, not exactly. It's presence. Full body, full thought, full soul awareness. Like being held in place by light that weighs as much as stone. Your vision shatters. Your nose bleeds. You see a flash of something divine, or infernal, towering above you. Not with wings, not with horns, just truth, raw and incomprehensible. You don't know what it is, only that it's watching, and it knows what's been done to you. You beg, you promise, you dissolve. You hallucinate gods, yes, and monsters, and your 3rd grade teacher reciting multiplication tables with teeth that stretch too far down her throat. You hallucinate your father, sitting calmly in a chair, telling you this was always going to happen. You hallucinate a version of yourself from before all this started, looking bored and disinterested. That version says you're embarrassing, says you should have seen it coming, says the suffering is the only part that feels honest. The room is gone. There is only sensation. You are sound and heat and trembling. Sometimes you hear voices, not the internal ones from before, but voices outside, clinical and unfazed. They comment on your condition. They chart your muscle response. They note your pupil dilation. They write that your left leg spasmed when the image of the burning house appeared. They wonder aloud whether it was associated with memory or just random projection. One of them says, "Note the correlation. Increase the dosage." You try to reach the edge of the experience, but it keeps unfolding. Every time you think you've hit a boundary, it peels back another layer. The hallucinations become recursive. You dream about hallucinating. You hallucinate that you're dreaming. You witness your own thoughts being edited in real time. Some thoughts are deleted mid-sentence. Others are replaced with questions you didn't want to ask. You open your mouth to speak, but a different voice comes out. One that calls the doctor, "Sir." When you regain a fragment of awareness, you're lying on your side, soaked in sweat. There's a metallic taste in your mouth and a faint vibration in your jaw. Your ears ring. Your nose drips something dark onto the pillow. You try to sit up, but the room tilts and the air turns to syrup. Someone pats your back. You flinch. They tell you you're doing great. That's all they ever say. You're left alone again. The walls are still breathing. The tape still plays. Your name loops and loops. You wonder how many times they've erased you. How many layers deep this goes. You remember being told the mind is like an onion. You laugh, but it comes out wrong, sharp and wet, like something trying to escape your throat. Later you ask the nurse how long you were under. She shrugs. Says that kind of question isn't helpful anymore. Says you're adjusting beautifully. You thank her. You don't know why. It just feels like what you're supposed to say. She writes something down and gives you a piece of candy. You stare at it until it melts in your hand. You're still hallucinating, but no one seems to care. That's how you know it's working. They tell you it's a transfer, that the next phase of your treatment requires a change in setting. The man who delivers this news wears a clean suit and a neutral face. He tells you that your progress has been exceptional. He doesn't use the word escape, but it sounds like an escape. New walls, new sounds, new chance to reset. You nod because it's easier than asking where. He He says you're going north, that the program up there is more specialised. You're too sedated to question it. You're already being packed. The flight is a blur of soft restraints and white noise. Someone hands you a cup of juice you don't remember asking for. It tastes like fluoride and grapefruit. You drift in and out. At some point, you wake to see snow through a window. Everything feels slower, quieter. The city is clean in a way that feels dishonest. A sign outside the airport says Montreal, but you wouldn't have known if they hadn't told you. It looks like every other place that pretends to be safe. The facility is different. Not colder, but more composed. The staff speak French accented English and wear gentle expressions like masks they've forgotten they're wearing. They call you mon ami and dear and sweetheart, which would be comforting if not for the wires and the clipboards and the padded restraints. Everything here is softly delivered, even the pain. You're assigned to a new doctor. He shakes your hand like you're meeting at a dinner party. He says his goal is to peel back the layers. You don't ask what's underneath. They say it's sleep therapy. They ease you into it slowly. A pill here, a drip there, a voice telling you to let go. The bed is warm, the lights are dim. You fall asleep quickly the first time, but the sleep isn't real. It's chemically sculpted, carved out by precision sedatives and subconscious suggestion. You don't dream. You drift. Hours pass without texture. You wake up with your mouth open and your limbs too heavy to move. Your tongue feels like it's been replaced with something synthetic. Your thoughts arrive in French, though you don't speak it. They ask you questions again, the same ones. But now the answers come easier. Not because you know them, but because you've stopped filtering. You've stopped distinguishing between real and invented. They ask who you are. You give 3 different names. None of them feel wrong. You're praised for your openness. The doctor tells you that memory is just sediment, that they're helping you stir the water. You nod. You think that makes sense, even if it doesn't. The electroshock is subtler here, calibrated to erase, not to punish. You aren't strapped down with urgency. You're guided gently into the chair, electrodes positioned like a crown. A nurse holds your hand while the charge runs through you. She hums something, a lullaby or a national anthem, you're not sure. Your vision turns white, then black, then red. When it returns, you're weeping, though you don't feel sad. The nurse wipes your cheek and tells you that progress is never comfortable. They keep you asleep for longer stretches. At first, just a few hours at a time, then entire days. You wake to new clothes, new notes on your chart, new phrases you didn't know you'd learned. Patterned dissociation. Positive response to depatterning. Subject no longer recalls familial identifiers. You read those words and think they're about someone else. You read them again and realise you don't remember who you thought you were. That's when it hits you. You've forgotten your name. It's not just a slip, not a temporary haze. It's gone. The place where it lived is empty. You try to pull it back by force. You strain your thoughts, trace through old memories, test the sound of letters on your tongue. Nothing sticks. The doctor asks if you're distressed by this. You say no. You're lying, but it doesn't matter. He smiles and writes something down. You try to see what it is, but the page is already turned. They show you photos, faces you half recognize, people you think you loved. One looks like your brother, another might be your mother. You aren't sure. You tell them they look familiar. They ask why. You don't know. They nod. The photos disappear. You don't see them again. They replace them with diagrams, maps, protocols. The faces don't come back. You stop missing them after a while. Montreal is colder, but not because of the weather. The cold here is structural, clinical, polite. You're dismantled with care. The violence is slower, almost affectionate. They don't tear you apart. They dissolve you, one thought at a time. The process is so gentle that you catch yourself saying, "Thank you." After the 3rd week, or maybe the 4th, you begin waking up in mid-sentence, reciting scripts, repeating phrases that sound familiar, but don't belong to you. You ask if you've been recorded. The nurse says, "Of course not, dear," and adjusts your drip. The final time they ask for your name, you pause for a full minute. Then you give them the one they assigned you. It doesn't feel right, but it doesn't feel wrong either. Just vacant. Like a label on a shelf in someone else's archive. The doctor claps his hands and says, "You've made excellent progress." You want to ask what happens now, what you're being shaped into, but all that comes out is okay. When they send you back, you don't recognize the place. You're told it's the same building, the same room, but the walls are different, or you are. You walk past a mirror and see a face you can't quite place. You smile at it anyway. It smiles back. You don't remember Montreal clearly, only the cold, and the hum, and the feeling that something important was taken while you were sleeping, something you might have offered freely, had they just asked the right way. But they didn't need to ask. They knew how to take it kindly. You wake up in a different bed. The mattress is thinner. The sheets are rough. You don't know the city outside the window, but there's traffic and pigeons and a billboard in a language you think you used to understand. There's no chart by the bed this time. No nurse, no clipboard, just your clothes, folded neatly on a chair, and a note that says nothing useful. It doesn't use your name, just tells you to check out by noon. Your head aches, not from sleep, but from trying to place yourself in space and time. You shuffle to the bathroom. You look in the mirror and pause. You recognize the shape of the face, but not the arrangement. Like someone reassembled you slightly wrong. The scar above your eyebrow wasn't always there. Or maybe it was, and you've just never looked at it from this angle. You open the cabinet, hoping for answers. There's a toothbrush, a comb, a razor, all unopened, brand new, like someone staged the scene of your life and forgot to leave any fingerprints. You check your pockets, no wallet, no ID, just a hotel key card and a bus ticket to somewhere you've never heard of. You sit on the edge of the bed and try to build a timeline. What day is it? What year? What season? Nothing sticks. Every thought feels like it belongs to someone else. You whisper your name aloud, and the syllables feel foreign in your mouth. You repeat it again, slower. It sounds less convincing each time. Then the voice speaks, not out loud, not in the room, just inside, like an internal narration you didn't authorize. It tells you what to do, calmly, clearly. It says, take the bag by the door, walk 3 blocks north. Wait at the corner until the light turns green, then cross. Don't talk to anyone. Don't hesitate. You don't remember being given instructions. You don't remember agreeing to any of this, but your legs are already moving. You don't stop to question why. The voice doesn't feel intrusive. It feels inevitable, familiar, like something you rehearsed long ago, like muscle memory for the mind. It doesn't explain itself, but it doesn't need to. You follow because following feels safer than stopping, because thinking feels dangerous now. You start to wonder if this is what they meant to happen. If this was the goal all along, not obedience but automation. You find yourself in a cafe. You're seated before you know how you got there. The server brings you something, coffee maybe, and you drink it, even though you don't remember ordering. The cup is warm, it grounds you briefly. You look around, faces pass without meaning. You try to make eye contact with someone, anyone, but no one looks up. No one seems to notice you. You wonder if that's part of the training too. A man at the next table drops a newspaper. You glance at the headline and feel a flicker of recognition. Something about a political scandal. A country you might have lived in, or bombed, or defected from. You aren't sure. You scan the article and catch a name that makes your stomach turn. Not out of fear, out of confusion. You know it. You shouldn't. But you do. The voice is silent now, like it's waiting to see what you'll do next. You finish the coffee, you stand, you walk, your body moves through the city like it's been mapped in advance. You avoid cameras without thinking. You cross intersections exactly when the lights shift. You sidestep a man before he bumps into you. You realize you've done this before, not here, but somewhere. The choreography is too precise. You move like someone trained, like someone assigned. You want to believe you chose this, that you volunteered, that there's some forgotten cause buried beneath the layers of confusion. But every instinct screams otherwise. By evening, you're in another hotel. Different layout, same wallpaper. The room is already reserved in your name, or at least a name you're told is yours. The front desk clerk doesn't blink, just hands you a key and smiles like you belong here. You enter the room and find a file on the desk. It contains photos, maps, handwritten notes in a script you don't remember learning. There's a packet of pills, one is missing. You sit down and stare at the contents for an hour. Nothing looks familiar. Everything feels important. You touch each object like it might jog something loose. It doesn't. You take the pills anyway. You lie down on the bed and wait for sleep that doesn't come. Instead, you close your eyes and watch your thoughts rearrange themselves into something more orderly, more efficient, less yours. The next morning you wake up in the same position. No dreams, no drool, no movement, just that voice again, telling you it's time to go. You obey, not because you want to, because not obeying feels like a concept you no longer remember how to embody. Your hands pack the bag. Your feet head toward the station. You pass people who look at you like you're a shadow. And maybe you are. A fragment. A shape left behind by someone who used to be whole. You try to remember what your life used to feel like. What it felt like to want something. To choose. But the thought slides off your brain like oil on glass. You reach for it anyway, just to prove you still can. It slips through your fingers. You walk faster. There are orders now, instructions, destinations you don't remember choosing. You follow them all, because you're not sure who you are anymore. It happens while you're flipping through channels in a motel room, somewhere off a highway you don't remember choosing. You're not looking for anything, just killing time. Then you see it, on one of the government channels, the kind with cheap lighting and long silences. A hearing room. Fluorescent lights. A man in a suit with tired eyes reading from a stack of papers. Behind him, a sign. MKULTRA. You freeze. You don't know why, but your stomach clenches. Your skin starts to crawl. The name is familiar in a way that makes your teeth hurt. The man talks about experimentation, about unethical procedures, about questionable consent and psychological manipulation. He uses words like detainee, subject, anomalous side effects. You recognize them all, not from a textbook, from somewhere deeper, somewhere your memory has filed under Do Not Open. You sit forward. The hearing continues. They show charts, graphs, timelines. Men in suits shuffle papers and avoid eye contact with the camera. You catch words in passing. LSD, electroshock, sleep therapy, Canada. You feel your pulse spike. Your hands start to tremble. They mention a doctor's name you remember, hearing through a fog of sedatives. You feel like you're going to be sick. They show a black and white photo of a facility. It's blurry, nondescript. You know that hallway. You've counted those tiles. You've sat in that plastic chair, staring at a wall with no clock. You whisper, "That's it." But no one's there to hear it. The next slide shows boxes, stacks of documents that look like they've been pulled from a basement. They say some files were destroyed. That full accountability is unlikely. They call it a tragedy, a mistake, a dark chapter in American history. You want to scream, not because of what they're saying, because of how they're saying it. Distant, sanitized, as if it's history, as if it's over. You sit on the edge of the bed, sweating, shaking, staring at a world that thinks it has already moved on. They talk about the past while your body is still recovering from what they did yesterday, or the day before, or whenever it was they last wiped the slate clean. They say the program was shut down in the 70s. They say there were victims, survivors, settlements. You're not on any of those lists. You check. You search online for your name. Your file number? Anything. You find articles, declassified memos, whistleblower testimonies. You find everything, except yourself. Your case isn't mentioned. Your file doesn't exist. Your name never appears. You weren't overlooked. You were erased. You try to reach out. You send letters, emails. You leave voicemails for lawyers, for reporters, for researchers who say they're working on a book. You tell them what happened. You describe the rooms, the wires, the voices. You talk about Montreal, about the chair, about the dreams. They don't call back. When they do, they're polite, skeptical, distant. They tell you your descriptions are vivid, but they've heard similar stories before. They ask if you're on medication. You say yes. They ask who prescribed it. You don't have an answer, so you write it all down. You try to be methodical. You list every detail you can recall. Room dimensions, medication labels, badge numbers. You include sketches, maps, phrases you remember from taped instructions. You compile it all into a manuscript and send it to someone who claims to be collecting testimonies. Weeks pass, then months. Nothing. You follow up. You're told they've decided not to move forward with your story. No explanation. Just a dead end, like everything else. You start posting online, forums, anonymous blogs, videos without your face. You tell your story in fragments, changing just enough detail to keep from being flagged. At first, a few people respond. They share similar stories. Then trolls appear. Conspiracists, deniers, people who call you insane. You stop posting. You shut everything down. Not because they're right, but because it's too exhausting to shout into a void that bites back. You try the VA next. You go in person. You sit across from a man who types too slowly and nods too much. You explain your symptoms, your history, your gaps. You ask if anything in your file looks altered. He checks. He scrolls. He tells you your records are incomplete. That's all. No explanation. No offer to dig deeper. He thanks you for your service. You don't correct him. You just leave, because you know how this ends. You still wake up some nights with the taste of static in your mouth. Your limbs numb. Your ears ringing with a tone no one else hears. You keep your hotel keycards in a shoebox under the bed. You don't know why. You just do. Sometimes you open the box and flip through them like they're memories. They're the only timeline you have. A geography of displacement. A map of nowhere. And through it all, the news says it's over. That justice was served. That records were released. That victims have closure. That the system acknowledged its failures. You watch these stories while your hands tremble and your teeth chatter and your mouth forms a name you're no longer sure is yours. You wonder how many others are out there, watching the same hearings, hearing the same lies, feeling the same panic. You wonder how many of them still believe it ended. You tell yourself you're one of the unlucky ones. But deep down, you know the truth. You were never meant to be found. It starts quietly, the way it always does. A soft, steady beep somewhere just behind your left ear. Not loud, not even urgent. Just there, present in the silence. It doesn't matter where you are. A motel room, a train car, a waiting room that smells like disinfectant and lost time. It always finds you. You can be surrounded by noise, submerged in city chaos, but the second things go still, the beeping starts. 4 tones, equal spacing. A rhythm too precise to be imagined, too mechanical to be natural. At first you thought it was real, something electronic nearby. A smoke detector battery maybe, or a bedside alarm. You tore open drawers, ripped wall panels, yanked plugs out of sockets. Nothing helped. You stayed in one motel just long enough to demand a room change. The beeping followed you there too. Eventually, you stopped asking. The front desk never heard it. No one ever did. You tried sleeping with the television on, thinking maybe white noise would cover it. But the beep cut through everything. You heard it under commercials, under laughter tracks, under the low drone of late-night documentaries. You even heard it once layered perfectly beneath the sound of a waterfall in some nature video. like it was part of the water, like it had been stitched in deliberately, just for you. It comes when your eyes close, when your breathing evens out, when your body forgets to brace itself, and every time it triggers something deep inside, maybe a memory, maybe a reflex. It's hard to say. Your pulse quickens, your skin gets cold, you start to hum low and tuneless, just to drown it out. Sometimes you bite your tongue until you taste blood. Sometimes you press your palms to your ears until the skin bruises. It never helps. The sound doesn't come from outside. You asked a doctor about it once, a real doctor, or at least someone wearing the costume. You said it was like tinnitus, but not. You said it made your teeth ache. He asked if it beeped in Morse code. You said no. He nodded too slowly. Wrote something in your chart. You never saw him again. There's a pattern to it, you're sure. 4 tones, always 4, evenly spaced. It reminds you of something. A machine in the Montreal lab, maybe? A device you weren't supposed to see? You remember lying on a gurney, electrodes on your chest, lights blinking in sync with the tone. You remember being told to listen carefully. You don't remember what came after, but every time you hear it now, your hands twitch, your eyes water, your stomach turns over like it's bracing for instructions. You've tried recording it, holding your phone near your ear at night, hoping the microphone will catch something. The playback is always empty, just the sound of your own breathing and the occasional whisper you don't remember making. Once you thought you heard a 5th tone buried in the silence, a glitch, a key. You looped it for hours trying to make sense of it. Then your nose started bleeding. You haven't tried again since. Some days it's stronger, clearer, almost like it's closer, like someone's activated a signal and you're the receiver. You feel your muscles tighten before the sound even starts. You feel yourself getting ready for something, though you don't know what. You pace the room, check the locks, test your memory like a stress drill. Name, date, location. The answers come slow and sticky. The beeping gets louder. You wonder if it's a command, not a metaphorical one, a literal one. Something planted years ago and buried under conditioning. A trigger you weren't meant to recognize. You've read enough now to know it's possible. They tried that. They wanted that. A person who could sleep for years, then awaken at the right sound. Not fully conscious, just useful. Just awake enough to follow orders without asking why. You've tried to fight it, to override it, to assign it different meaning. You trained yourself to say a word every time you hear the tone. Any word. Something benign. Apple, gravel, television. It's a game or a ritual or maybe a test. If you can choose the word, then maybe you're still in control. But sometimes your mouth opens and something else comes out. A code you don't remember learning. A string of numbers. A phrase in a language that doesn't feel like yours. When that happens, you sit very still for hours, afraid to move. You've considered going back, finding one of the clinics, seeing if it's still there, buried beneath a new name and a fresh coat of paint. You've imagined walking into the lobby, asking for help, demanding answers, but you already know what would happen. They'd look at you like you were lost. They'd say there's no record, no file, no appointment. Then they'd ask you to wait. You'd sit down. You'd hear the beeping again. You'd black out. So you stay on the move. New cities, new names. You keep your luggage light and your routines lighter. You sleep in 15-minute intervals. You avoid silence. You pretend you're normal. You tell yourself the sound is just a hallucination, just a scar, just a leftover echo from something that's technically over. But the part of you that still reacts, the part that twitches, that salutes, that counts to 4 every time, it doesn't believe that. And neither do you. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. If you're awake, thank you for drifting through history with me. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet, bitter truths, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with the next forgotten life you'd like us to walk through together. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. Sleep well.